James Gunn just dropped a ton of information not only about the upcoming Superman film, but the future of DC as a whole. He does reveal some amazing things about Superman, but he talks about how Batman is going to be the priority moving forward. He talks about Wonder Woman, Matt Reeves' The Batman 2, and he also talks about a Marvel DC crossover, and he says that it's actually been talked about a lot. And he really dives into what his thoughts are about making a Marvel and DC film. This interview with Rolling Stones also talks about Marvel and what went wrong over at Marvel Studios these past handful of years. He addresses just a ton of things, so let's talk about the updates first for DC and then talk about Superman. This is a very long article and interview with Rolling Stone titled Superman Director James Gunn. You don't want everyone to root for you. DC Studios co-CEO goes deep on his high-stakes take on the Man of Steel, the future of his new DC universe, and how getting fired helped him feel loved. The opening paragraph says that together, him and Peter Safran, they're creating a new superhero universe around some very old characters, aiming to finally make Superman and friends, and family, and flying pet truly competitive with the currently shaky Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, if you want to read the full article, I encourage you to do so. It talks a lot about James Gunn and his journey to get here to CEO or co-CEO of DC Studios and directing and writing this new Superman film. We're going to skip past a lot and go right to the updates. We'll start with Batman, which James Gunn calls his biggest issue in all of DC right now. And it even starts off by talking about how James Gunn is indeed kind of open to having Robert Pattinson's The Batman be the main Batman of the DC universe. They said, "You once said that the fact that Robert Pattinson's Batman is not in this universe was Matt Reeves' choice. Does that mean if it were up to you, you would have just pulled that into your universe?" James Gunn said, "It would be a consideration. We'd have to think about it. We'd have to think about it. It's not like we've never discussed it." And here's where he talks about his biggest issue. They state, "It's interesting. Your answer is much more present tense than I expected, as if it's an ongoing possibility." James Gunn replied with, "No, I don't. Batman's my biggest issue in all of DC right now personally. And I'm not writing Batman, but I'm working with the writer of Batman and trying to get it right because he's incredibly important to DC, as is Wonder Woman. So outside of the stuff that I'm doing in the projects that are actively going, our two priorities are finishing our Wonder Woman and our Batman scripts," which he did confirm in the last big interview that we got that, yeah, Wonder Woman and Batman, those are his main priorities right now. And he does confirm that it's still The Brave and the Bold. They state, "The Batman script, is that still called The Brave and the Bold?" He replies with, "Right now, yeah. Right now," meaning it could certainly change. But here's where he talks about what needs to happen with Batman in the DC universe. Rolling Stone says, "In the broadest sense, what needs to be figured out to make those two properties work? Batman in this universe, ? James Gunn says, "Batman has to have a reason for existing, right? So Batman can't just be, oh, we're making a Batman movie because Batman's the biggest character in all of Warner Brothers," which he is. But because there's a need for him in the DCU and a need that he's not exactly the same as Matt's Batman, but yet he's not a campy Batman. I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in a funny, campy Batman, really. So we're dealing with that. I think I have a way in, by the way. I think I really know what it's. I just am dealing with the writer to make sure that we can make it a reality." So big details about Batman, the Brave and the Bold there. We're not going to have a campy, funny Batman. He is going to be a serious Batman. And he does give a little bit more detail about what he means when he's asked about Wonder Woman. He said it's similar, but Wonder Woman is easier for him because there haven't been so many infinite portrayals of Wonder Woman. And he says that Batman, though, it seems like half of the comics that have come out of DC over the past 30 years have Batman in them. He's the most famous superhero in the world and the most popular superhero in the world. And people love him because he is interesting. But also having so much of him out there can also make him boring. So how do you create that property that's fun to watch? So even though he's not going to be campy and funny, of course it's still going to be a fun watch. Then on top of it all, they asked again, just to clear it up, is there still a non-zero chance that Matt Reeves' Batman will get sucked into your universe? In which James Gunn said, I would never say zero because you never know, but it's not likely. It's not likely at all. And I'll also say that Batman Part 2 is not canceled. We don't have a script. Matt's slow. Let him take his time. Let him do what he's doing. God, people are mean. Let him do his thing, man. So there you go. The Batman Part 2 is not canceled, and Batman for the main DCU is very important to James Gunn, and he's figuring it out right now. Also, quick update on Supergirl. They said that's no longer called Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, correct? And James Gunn said, I think it's just called Supergirl. So just like he removed Legacy from Superman, he has now removed Woman of Tomorrow from Supergirl, and that is just Supergirl. Now, as far as the Marvel DC crossover is concerned, he has a lot of thoughts on it, and I gotta say, I do really love his take on it. The Rolling Stone says, sitting on the table here is a Superman/Spider-Man crossover comic book from the 70s. At some point, it feels like it's gonna happen in the movies, doesn't it? Maybe 10 years from now, meaning the Superman/Spider-Man, or really the DC/Marvel crossover, in which James Gunn says, we talked about it 1 billion times. That could easily happen, but simultaneous to that, I think it would be interesting. But I also think people are a little over it. I think people want to see good stories with their superheroes, and that's what matters. And we'll pause right here for a second because I just have to say I absolutely agree with him. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I do really love fan service, but it has to fit within a good story. There has to be a purpose for it. And I love the fact that they have talked about a Marvel DC crossover so much that he says they've talked about it 1 billion times. That's a lot. But they haven't pulled the trigger because there hasn't been an actual reason to do so story-wise. So I really do like that take on it. But he does continue and he says, and they want to see different types of stories with their superheroes. And people love superheroes. That's obvious, but they need more variety and they need just more quality storytelling. Again, I 100% agree. And he says, and just having Spider-Man and Superman team up isn't going to do it if it's shit. So it's got to come from a real place, and it's really hard to make that work. I did Superman because I love the character, and I was excited about writing that movie. If I were to write a Superman versus Spider-Man movie, is it a concept I'm going to be like, oh, yeah, this could be a great film? Or am I going to do it because, oh yeah, people want to see Superman and Spider-Man team up? For me, it would have to be, if we ever did that, it would have to be under someone who thought it was going to be awesome and wasn't just a cash grab, because I'm just not into that. So it seems like as far as a Marvel and DC crossover is concerned, he is specifically thinking about Spider-Man and Superman, and that would be kind of hard because of the rights issue with Sony. James Gunn and Kevin Feige are still very good friends. So the option for Marvel and DC to cross over is certainly there. Kevin Feige himself said that he's open to it, but if it has to be Spider-Man in James Gunn's mind, that might be hard to work out with Sony and Marvel. But the good news is James Gunn says that they've talked about it 1 billion times, so it's definitely on their radar. Now, as far as Superman is concerned, I highly encourage everyone to read this entire article because it sounds like James Gunn just really hit the nail on the head with how to approach Superman. James Gunn does confirm multiple times throughout this interview that Superman is going to be vulnerable and he's a little less powerful than people are used to. He says, I see the online things. Who would beat whom? Homelander or Superman or effing whatever, Adam Warlock or Brightburn. And I'm like, this is the effing stupidest effing conversation. Like, so then whoever would win the fight means that they're the best? Because I'll just go out and write Godman, who can destroy you with a wink, and I win. I win all the fights forever. But I didn't want a Superman who could punch planets, and also we're creating a whole universe now. So what's a girl with wings gonna do in the face of that? So he's a little less powerful. Green Lantern, Guy Gardner's pretty effing powerful. They're all pretty powerful. And I gotta say, I do really love that. He also says that what cracked Superman for him, the script, was Krypto, and confirms that Superman falling into the snow and Krypto coming to get him is the beginning of the movie. He says, the beginning of the movie is the first thing I wrote, with Krypto coming to Superman in the snow and Krypto taking him home. That really was about the tone of the whole movie. It's a flying dog who wears a cape, but that led immediately to the robots, to the fortress rising from the ground, to the device that isn't in the comics, the giant magnifying glass, which powers him up more quickly than just the regular sun would. Bringing all those elements into a Superman movie in a way that hasn't happened, not to mention that he exists in a world where superheroes or some form of metahumans have existed for 300 years. It's just a different thing. And last but not least, he mentioned something that has kind of been controversial for a long time, how people can't recognize that Clark Kent is Superman because of the glasses. Rolling Stone asks, in the Superman trailer, we see that Lois already knows Clark is Superman, so you bypassed one of the stickiest issues. How does Lois not see past the glasses? James Gunn says, it comes up again later in the movie, and it's explained. She says it. We mention it, and it's a one-off and people chuckle, but there's stuff later in the movie about the glasses that are canon. That's canon in the comics. So I gotta say, overall, I think James Gunn really is about to be on a huge roll here with Superman, with the future of DC. I think everything he said so far is him showing that he is handling it all with care. And I gotta say, I'm just super excited for Superman and the future of DC, especially our new Batman and Wonder Woman, and just all of it. But go ahead and let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Please don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the latest DC news. And as always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.